good time to,
We're recording.
okay, I'm gonna call this, utility committee to order. Let's say the pledge of allegiance, please. Chris, will you lead us on that?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kenneth, would you do a roll call, please?
Walter,
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Epperson.
Here.
We also have Chris and Tim with us, Tim Hicken with us. All right, well, let's start. Is there anyone you want to particularly start with, Chris?
No, it's all right. We can just go through an order there.
We'll go through an order then. All right, we'll start with salt costs.
So we've talked a little bit about this in the past, the cost that we pay for softener salt. The first page in your packet is a breakdown of three different salt providers. The very first one is Cargill, which is who we currently use. We've used them for several years now. And then in looking into this to try and find a way to save some money on our salt costs, we went to the state bid website and found that the state contract has been awarded to Robinson Salt. That is the second price there, which is cheaper than Cargill that we're paying now. And then we found a third company, Mid-American Salt, that came in at a price that is tremendously lower than the other two personnel involved there. So we went and did some research on their product, research on their customer service, and reached out to some references. And Mid-American Salt came back, well, we'll just go through the chart there. The price is $123 per ton for Mid-American Salt compared to $183 is what we're paying now. We order in bulk, so they're 22-ton trailers. We average around one a week between the two water plants. It's not always one a week. In the winter, we use less people using water, but that's the average. So we're looking at a 33% reduction in cost when compared Mid-American Salt compared to Cargill. Which,
Chris,
yes.
I hate to interrupt, but I have no idea who, in these subsequent paragraphs, who is who, which company is which. It just says.
So these, that makes perfect sense, it's not very clear. Absolutely. All of the subsequent paragraphs are, I guess, justifying arguments for why I think we should give Mid-American Salt a try.
Okay,
So they're all related to Mid-American Salt.
okay, thank you.
From there. Yeah, just definitely not clear the way I wrote it up. So if we go across, NSF 60 is the industry standard for things that will come into contact with treated water. Obviously, all salt providers meet NSF 60 requirements. The purity percentage comes from the company themselves. Mid-American Salt is a little bit more pure than Cargill, who we usually go with, but you can see all three of them are in the almost 99% pure salt, so they're all relatively high. However, when you get into buying the amount of salt that we do, a 1% difference can be quite a bit of sand and gravel that we do have in our salt that could possibly be removed. In the lead time, Cargill and Robinson both say they want a week's notice before a truck will come out, and Mid-American Salt said 3 to 4 days. I will tell you that they're all about 3 or 4 days. They say they want a week, but they're all about 3 or 4 days to get them to come out. So that's just based on numbers. So then Mary Ann, the treatment plant superintendent, went through and did the legwork for contacting the company and their references. Cargill, customer service wise, is the first paragraph. Cargill is pretty decent with their customer service. We've never really had a big issue with them. We did ask them if they were willing to negotiate on the price because we're finding some cheaper options, and they were not interested in that. Robinson's customer service was poor, to be frank about it. They wouldn't return calls. They wouldn't give us much information. A lot of their information that I gathered came from their state bid contract, but they were not really interested in interacting with us. And then Mid-American Salt, their customer service was excellent. She had no problem getting a hold of them. They called her back that day, emailed her all the information she wanted, so that was a good thing. One of the things she wanted to make sure was that this isn't some type of an introductory cost, similar to what you would get when you sign up for a cable plan. It's cheap this year, and then we're going to raise it back up. This has been their price for the last several years, and it is not an introductory cost So that was a plus. They gave us 3 references. Mary Ann reached out to all 3 of them. Only Ross County Water got back to her, but they have been using them, Mid-American Salt, and they have had nothing but good things to say. They call them, they deliver every single week. They have no problem with supply, and they've actually noticed that because the salt is more pure, that they have to clean their salt tank and their softener valves less often than they used to, which was nice. So if you just look at the numbers, 33% savings from Cargill, using 2019's numbers, we spent around $140,000 on salt in 2019. So a 33% savings on that would be $46,200 annually to the water fund, if that is the price we were to go with. So I guess I'm coming to the utility committee because we've got 3 quotes here, but the annual amount that we spend is well over $50,000. So we should competitively bid this service out. And I guess I am hoping to get a recommendation to council that we waive the competitive bid requirement for this particular service. We do have 3 quotes. One of those quotes is the state bid quote. So I mean, if we went with that one, we would not have to competitively bid. But we found a provider who we feel good about, who gives us a tremendous amount of savings. And by not competitively bidding the process, then we don't have to create a spec book, advertise, and then evaluate the bids, which all costs money, involving the city engineer with that. So that's pretty much, it's a lot of information, but that's the information that I have. I'd be eager to hear utility committee's thoughts on this concept.
What's the cost to put it out to competitive bid?
So I don't know what the exact cost would be. I know the advertisement would be right around $1,000, and then the engineer would put together a spec saying this is exactly the kind of salt that we need and all the numbers involved behind that. And then they would also evaluate the spec. So I don't know the exact number of the cost, but I would estimate it to be $5,000 to $6,000 total when everything is said and done. It's not a tremendous expense, but it I don't believe that we will find anybody cheaper than $123 per ton.
So it would be, it's certainly way less than the savings, which you estimate to be about $46,000.
Yes, it is, yes.
My question, Chris, did we currently bid out a yearly salt providing contract? Do we currently bid that out?
No, we have not, to my knowledge, we have not bid this service out for as long as I've been around.
So,
We don't have a contract with salt, we just buy them by the trucks as we go
so you
along.
there hasn't been a need other than the budget being approved for any council action?
Correct.
So why do you think we need to bid this out? If you were just gonna change salt suppliers and you were gonna go on a per truck basis, do you think, still within the budget, obviously not exceeding the budget,
Right.
far less than the budget, why would you propose to bid this out?
So my understanding from speaking with Mr. Zetz is that because the annual expense for the same product is gonna be over 50, that's where the requirement is, and that he thought we probably should have been doing this before.
Oh, okay.
So that's the driver behind it.
So this is just a situation, Chris, in which you found that for whatever reason, there had never been, as far as you can determine, there's not been a contract for salt that you can find.
Correct. That's my understanding of the thing. So really, I just want to make sure that we do it properly moving forward, and my intent is to give this Mid-American Salt Company a try.
So the other part to that question is, if you do bid it out, is this for a yearly contract from them, so that essentially they're going to tie themselves down to this price, this $123 per ton price for a year? Or is this gonna be a truck price? They're gonna basically say, I should say a per ton price, they're gonna agree to a tonnage price, and that they don't know how much we're gonna buy from them, we don't know how much we're gonna buy from them. I'm just trying to understand, when you bid something out, typically you wanna know, what are we buying from them, how much, how often, all those details.
Right.
And this seems like that isn't that type of contract.
Right, so the way we work now and the way Mid-American would work is, again, without a contract. It would just be by the load. And so throughout the year, if the salt price goes up, which happened many times with Cargill, they'll basically send you an email and say, our salt now costs this, so if you want to keep money, keep going.
So that gets back to my point of why are we bidding this out?
Again, outside of the interpretation of the $50,000 limit for the whole year, that is my motivator, but behind bidding it out.
I understand that part, and I fully appreciate that needs to be, that's something that we are gonna spend 50,000, there's no doubt, we
Right.
will. But
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to figure out how do we bid this out and still do anything by bidding it? I mean, other than just bidding it, by just basically going out for a public bid for a truck, a tonnage rate, that's all we're getting.
Yes, sir. I believe it would almost be,
I would hope we
for
could do
lack of
that
better
for like,
phrasing, I would anticipate it to be
$1,500.
like
That
it's
seems
almost
to
like a
be like-
token process.
we should be able to write that one up pretty quickly.
I would think so. I would think so. But, and so it's, the way the contract will be written, everybody will have their price in there, and then they'll all have language saying, basically, if the price of salt goes up, we'll have to adjust our price as well. That's how the state contract is written as well. It allows for, like an inflation, that's probably the wrong term. Like a surcharge, it allows for
Fuel
something like that.
surcharge,
Yes,
they probably have a number of different reasons.
same kind of
why.
concept, right.
Virus for surcharge, whatever.
Is an
Well,
option.
now I'm confused, because first you said that the 123 a ton was not an introductory price.
Correct.
So this is a
Market rate.
commodity rate, a market rate. So if tomorrow, for whatever reason, Mid-American, I guess I'm not really sure what exactly we're contracting with and for what. Because if Mid-American, I mean, I don't know why we have a contract at all. I mean, that's why you just don't look at a ticker in your office and who's got the cheapest salt this week and say, hey, Mid-America, you got it for 123, I'm buying from you this week, and then next week, Robinson is the cheapest, buy from Robinson.
So we could easily do that. I again come back to the only reason I'm bringing up the competitive bid process is because of the annual $50,000 number.
I don't think anybody here is very happy that you've done this homework, that you found that there's some
Right.
savings, that's
Right.
awesome. Don't get in, I'm just trying to get into like these are the details.
Like how
that
we would actually
Mr. Barstow
bid.
and I are kinda asking about is, why are we gonna spend money to bid this out when we're not really it's like gas prices. I didn't bid with BP, I've got a card that says I can buy gas from them, but I didn't get a set price with them.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if we've got a budget that says we're gonna spend so much money per year on salt.
Here's my other question. You said that Mr. Zett said there's a $50,000, and once you get to $50,000, is that with one company for one commodity, or is that for the commodity for the budget? You see what I mean? I mean, so because, for example, 2019, we spent $140,000 on salt. If you've got your little salt provider ticker there in your office, maybe there's other suppliers. We may spend $140,000, give or take, but we don't spend it all with one company because you keep looking for the cheapest spot price.
My understanding is it is the same commodity from the same company.
Then I don't know. Then if
But then so the only thing I want to make sure of is that if we do stay with Mid-American Salt throughout the year, because they are the cheapest throughout the whole year, I don't want to be in an improper situation, but you could go over 50 by the end of the year.
well, you just come back to us and get permission.
That's
We're not gonna tell
that's
you
easily
no.
one way to handle it.
You can't buy salt.
That is easy.
Water's gonna be a little hard this week.
That is.
So I guess I don't know how much these suppliers vary their price from week to week. Mr. Walther brought up the gasoline price. I mean, gasoline prices in an area tend to be about the same, but if you travel to another area, and gas is always more expensive at the gas stations down by the freeway, obviously.
Right. Right.
It is if you come up here and buy in town. So I don't know what the market forces are in this,
So I will say, the prices don't change that regularly because basically everybody is buying salt from the Great Lakes area. They get barged down to Cincinnati and then they get distributed from there. So the savings come from a company's overhead costs
Okay.
and the things they can do. But if the salt market does go up, that's when you usually see.
so the 123, the 179.12, and the 183.11, they're not gonna, none of these companies are gonna sign a contract with us for 12 months saying, we're gonna sell you salt for 123 a ton for the next 12 months.
I think they will with the caveat of the similar language you would use for a fuel surcharge, where if industry-wide salt prices go up, I think that would be standard language that they would have in a contract. But I'll be honest with you, we've never signed a contract with a salt provider, so.
Have you always, to your knowledge, has the city always bought from Cargill?
Before Cargill, it was Morton, and I believe there was some type of a buyout thing that happened. But for as long as I can remember, yes, we've gone.
But you don't track salt prices amongst the various companies and buy from the cheapest one each week?
No, to this point, it has just been that's who we use, and we keep going with them.
So what do you want, what are you asking the council to do?
What I'd really like to do is to go, I want to use Mid-American Salt, and since we don't have to sign a contract with them, and we're not in a contract now, I want to use them for the rest of the year, once we get them set up as a vendor, and see what their product is. And if it is beneficial to us, and we do like everything that we're hearing, then I would like to transfer over to using Mid-American Salt until, we find a better deal or something goes wrong with their service. And at that point, so it would be for next year that I would anticipate us spending over $50,000 with Mid-American for one commodity.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to get the thought ball rolling, I guess, with the committee. But I think I'm gonna switch to Mid-American as soon as we get them set up the vendor and see if we agree with everybody else's assessment that we've talked to. And if it doesn't work out, we can just go back to Cargill and we're not adding anything operationally, so.
I don't imagine you could go with Robinson, I guess.
And you could easily go with Robinson and then all the bidding stuff is gone because they're the state. And you're right, we wouldn't go back to Cargill, we'd go to Robinson. 'Cause they
Looks
say
like
so.
with the weeks we have left starting September, in the beginning of September, you're gonna spend about $54,000 if you do 22 tons per week.
Right, and we'll actually be a little under that because in the winter, we use less water and so we use less
So
salt.
you're gonna be right
So I think we'll
about
be
it.
right, yeah.
You're gonna be right at about 50,000.
Good point, yeah.
My suggestion would be to say, really, I would work to challenge Mr. Zetz, to see what exactly you have to bid out for the rest of this year.
Okay,
I would my suggestion is to move to the cheaper, always move to the cheaper supplier, as long as they can get it here and they
same quality.
do what they say they're gonna do, right? Same, and even better quality.
Right,
And hopefully, if next year comes around and we need to bid this out, we can put something out at the beginning of the year and bid it out for the whole year and have something.
and be done with it, that sounds like.
Does that
a
make
perfect
sense to that would be my course of action.
That makes perfect sense.
Out of curiosity, why would we not take the lesser amount and not bid it?
Cause you're not getting any, by bidding it, really all you're doing is you're checking the governmental box of doing a bid. You're not getting anything for that bid. They're not able to, you're not securing a per tonnage price. You're not
Right.
securing an amount, or I should say a quantity. You're not saying, well, I'm gonna need whatever 22 times 51 is.
Right.
I'm gonna need 10,000, tons of salt. So you're not getting any of that. All you're doing is bidding it to really check the governmental box.
So if the bidding was waived by council,
Yeah.
is that what you?
I don't
is that what
see
you
any
guys-
benefit in bidding this and spending
No, I agree, okay, we're on the same page.
any money to bid it.
No, you're like, and I think Andy's analogy to the gasoline company is perfect. I mean, if all of a sudden there's, BP is selling it for less, I'm gonna go buy it from BP. But if Kroger has it, if they've got the cheapest, I'll buy from Kroger or UDF. I don't have to buy from,
We're not getting any,
yeah, we
we're
can.
not getting any guarantee, we're not
If-
getting any warranty, we're not getting anything by bidding it.
If Mid-America said, hey, look, we'll lock you in for 6 months, Okay, we'll lock you into 123 for 6 months. I'd say,
Salt.
okay,
Yeah.
then that's
Yeah.
worth, well, I don't know why we would bid. I still don't know why we would bid. I
Right.
mean, so,
Well, maybe that's the procedure of the bid. Hey, we want a bid for 6 months, we want however much salt that might be,
Mhm.
5,000 tons, give us your best price, and whatever that is, that's what we're bidding for, and that's what we're gonna obligate to take
right.
for 6 months. That's not what we're doing.
We're just saying, hey, we wanna buy salt from you, and they can say, okay, and then, oh, next week it's $136 a ton, because everything went up,
Right.
Or
Nope.
the salt mine flooded, or something happened, there's a shortage.
whatever.
Right.
Could happen. Well, I guess we should ask Mr. Setz, how would he want us to proceed? Does he want council to waive the bidding requirement? Or is he going to give you an opinion that says, maybe you don't need to bid this because we're not really bidding, we're not getting anything for it?
Absolutely, I definitely agree, that there is no benefit to the city for going through the bid process. It is a governmental check in the box. So that's a perfect plan, I will definitely get with Mr. Betts and narrow that down.
No, that's very good stuff.
So if there's nothing else about salt costs there, number 4, we'll move on to number 5, water used for municipal purposes. So the next page in your packet is just a little snippet of the Ohio Revised Code. We've all been trying to find ways to help with the pool's water bill deficit for the year. And there is the option, if council so chooses, laid out in the ORC to allow for municipal use, public use of municipal utilities, basically the water. The water could be given to the parks for free because it is for a public utility. So with that option being out there and with us all being together, I thought just real quick spitball, maybe I'd give my opinion and then be happy to hear what you guys think about this. I do think that it would be a great benefit to the Parks Fund. Obviously, they are tight on their budget, and the water bill is a huge hit to them. Some of the things that give me a little bit of pause is the ownership of the responsibility to keep the pool full will go back on the utility department, which ultimately gets paid for by the ratepayers. So that is something to consider. Is it has to get paid for by somebody, so it will come from the ratepayers' money what they're paying in. But the big hiccup that I have is motivation to fix the leaks. Nothing motivates you to fix a leak more than seeing the water bill for the amount of water that you have lost. So if it was enacted, if legislation was enacted by council to give water for free to the pool, you kind of lose some of that motivation. Now, with the administration we have now, with Mr. Crawford and Mr. Hicken, that is really not a concern. I'm not concerned that they're gonna just let a leak go and not be responsible about it. The only concern I have is for future administrations down the road. And it's just something that I think I can counter by just staying on top of in my council reports during the season and saying this is where the pool's usage is at. We're noticing a leak, it's getting bigger, that kind of thing. And I think if I do that, then it's not really going to be a huge concern. The amount of water we're talking about does not prevent us from providing water to all of our customers. It's not something our system can't handle. But I just wanted to kind of just throw it out there that this is a possibility to help the pool out, and that's my take on it. I'd be happy to hear what you guys think.
Well, I guess my thought when I looked this up and kind of saw this as being an option, I go back to, when COVID started and you were talking about how much more water is being used and how much more sanitary, obviously, with everybody being home.
Right.
So other than the lack of bill paying or having people that are missing the payments, I took that as the utility department, the water department is really actually either doing as well as they were or even potentially slightly better under this situation with COVID. Obviously, the pool and other divisions of the city are not, and they have other things such as costs for having employees down there to watch for social distancing or cleaning or whatever. I didn't take it so much as the leak part of it. I took it as maybe offsetting some of the extra costs that the pool had as way of justifying isn't the right word. It's an availability through the ORC to do something like that, not only for the pool, but for any city structure.
Right.
So I thought it might be worth at least throwing out there to see if it was at least worth doing for this very odd year of 2020.
Well, for this very odd year, I 100% support doing that. And in the long run, I don't have a huge hiccup on it. It's just it'll be up to, I think it'll be up to me to track the leaks getting worse. We got to do something like that. And it is legislation like this is the only way that we can take anything from the enterprise fund and help out some of the other branches that have been hit harder.
Is this something too that we could review every year, like give a 1-year authorization to do that, or?
Absolutely.
And that way, if, you know, the fears that you had for, you know, maybe future administrations maybe not paying attention to it, you know, if it's something once a year that's looked at by council, then that kind of keeps that spotlight on.
Definitely does, yeah. I think council can do something like this for any length of time they would choose.
Yeah, to me, the leak is a big problem in terms of park infrastructure. To me, it's the biggest infrastructure problem that the park has right now, the park department. And we've got to get it fixed. If we don't fix that thing, as Andy says, it's going to get worse. It's going
Right.
to potentially damage the ground there, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the leak's got council's attention, and I think it's going to be I think Lanier's going to put in his budget some mechanism and, or not mechanism, but some placeholder money to fix that leak. Because to me, if we don't fix the leak, the pool's not worth reopening, because it's gonna get worse. It's like a culvert that we don't fix, you know, and it's just gonna get worse and worse. Yes, Mr.
Go
Cook.
ahead, Mr. Barstow. I think, believe it, we're even looking at the fix that was identified by the leak company as happening before the end of the year,
Okay,
even with all the other cuts.
okay,
So that's scheduled for September, late September.
okay, all right.
So you're right.
So it may even help a little bit with that, with the budget for,
Mhm.
so anyhow, this was just, I didn't know, when I talked with Mr. Hicken about it, I didn't think, this isn't a widely known ordinance out there, or ORC code. So it's just something to throw out there to say, is there a way to maybe help
Yeah.
offset some of the water costs that have been affected not only by a leak, but the pool's attendance has been affected by COVID. You know, you've just got a lot of things. And on the flip side of that is the parks are very important to the community when COVID is going on.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of water usage out there, you know, just for that reason.
Right.
So anyhow,
Right. Absolutely.
that was
No,
thrown out there.
it was interesting. It's effective 1953. I'd never heard of it
Yeah.
before, so
Yeah.
it definitely was hidden into the rules somewhere. But
Well, I would suggest that Mr. Crawford work with Mr. Zetz and Mr. Hicken to draft an ordinance to bring to council, so we can just
Or you
discuss
got a
it.
resolution
And
affecting.
it says it has to be with ordinance. May provide by ordinance.
Very good. Okay.
Mhm.
May,
That's,
may provide by ordinance, yes. That's exactly right.
I would
Yep.
let the utility committee know, that legislation effectively is already in a draft form.
Okay.
Um, I have two questions that I'm working with Brian on with that. Number one is, I do not know if it can be made retroactive. That's one question that I can't. And then there's the issue of, if you're going to specifically do it for the pool, we also already do this, as a matter of fact, for this building, the police station, historic town hall. There's already been this quasi-relationship where, okay, we won't charge you for water, and you don't charge us rent, kind of a concept-y thing. It's always been that way. And if this could take care of that,
Well,
my concept was, why not? But, and so I kind of threw the brakes on just the municipal pool section of the language, because I wasn't sure if we wanted to expand it.
Okay. Okay.
Seems like it's a very good tool to right the ship, or correct maybe what we had been doing in the past, and certainly, I think that would maybe change Mr. Epperson's question, though, about doing this yearly.
It might.
I mean, essentially, we're paying ourselves, right?
Yeah,
I mean, one way or another, if there's a deficit at the pool, it's still, the bill still needs paid, so we're gonna take the hit either side of the coin. So,
I think this cleans up the enterprise fund. The restrictions on the enterprise fund could be freed up by something like this. And I guess you could always put an annual review or a biannual review or something like that, even with the buildings, with the understanding that the buildings are always going to be approved.
A future council could just rescind the ordinance,
True,
take it away,
that's very true,
so
very true.
if they felt that was no longer appropriate or whatever.
Okay, that's all I have for number 5 there. If nobody else has anything, we'll move on to number 6, which is the Buy the Solids program. So the next paper clip together packet is a sheet with a bunch of numbers on it, and then the contract with AgriSludge to do the land application process. So as we have gone through this since I became the director and have been working through, the concept has been to bring the biosolids program back into house. The closer we get to that time frame, the more I think that I'm on the side of it. We will get more bang for our buck if we continue to let AgriSludge do the biosolids program. So I broke down some numbers, the best way that I can come up with to try and quantify everything. At the very top of the sheet, you'll see removal and landfill, removal and land application, and removal and hauling. So when we went through and got the contract from AgriSludge, the utility committee negotiated to work out and get an a la carte price menu, and those are the 3 services that he will provide for the 3 different costs. Before we began a biosolids program under Mr. Coy, everything went to the landfill. Everything that we made went to the landfill. And so the total back then was more because our press was not as good, so we were hauling a lot of water. But based on last year's numbers, to send everything to the landfill would cost just over $43,000. To have AgriSludge do the entire land application process, meaning they come in, we load their trucks, they take it to the field, and they bring their tractor out, they apply it to the field, do all the paperwork, and then submit it back to the city. Cost $21,300 last year. And he gave us a price for just hauling. So to give you a little bit of background real quick on the hauling part, the truck that we have, it took us about 3 weeks to get all of our product to the field. The trucks and drivers that they have, it took them 2 days. So it was really a no-brainer to lean on them continuing to haul moving forward, to haul the product to the field. They just do it so much quicker than us. There are EPA restraints on how long the product can be at the field before you apply it. But if you can get it all up there in 2 days, that's a moot point. It's really not a big deal. So the difference between having AgriSludge do the land application and having AgriSludge only haul it to the field is $9,693 per year. So then I broke down and tried to quantify the costs that the city would have if we did the application portion in-house, and that is that table there in the middle. Altogether, I come up with a number of $47.95 that it would cost the city to bring it in-house on the quantifiable expenses that I can come up with. So that leaves a difference of right around $4,900. So just to make it easy, we're about $5,000 short of having AgriSludge do the whole project, as opposed to having AgriSludge do the hauling for us, and then we do the land application portion. Some of the things that, in the non-quantifiable factors, this takes my systems team, which is everybody who's out in the field, it takes them completely out for 2 weeks out of the year, 1 week for each application process. While they're out, the plant operator teams are still running the plants, so we limit service orders, we won't do water and sewer inspections for new builds, all that stuff becomes emergency only, because in order to do it, we have to pull someone out of the plant to go do that. There is a lack of understanding of agronomy, which is basically the science behind putting the product on the field, getting the nutrient dosages right. It's a new concept for the people that we have. AgriSludge, of course, does this for a living, and their documents and numbers and math and all that line up pretty well. So that would be something that we have to learn. Another thing is AgriSludge will often work on nights and weekends. So applying the sludge to the field, there's more EPA regulations on if rain is forecasted, if a half an inch of rain is forecasted in the next 24 hours, you can't apply. So if the application process takes 3 days, you have to have 3 days of no rain. And it happened in the spring of this year. Mr. Sutherland, the farmer, was ready for the product to be put on the field, and you know, he's got to try and get that done before he can get his crops planted. So he said, I've got this week, we've got to get it done. And the 3-day time frame landed Friday night into Saturday and into Sunday. AgriSludge does all that without any markup on the, on their contract. They give us a rate to do it, doesn't matter when they do it. If we were to do that in-house and find ourselves in that situation, then there would be an overtime cost for the employees to do it on nights and weekends. Another non-quantifiable thing is the ever-changing EPA regulations regarding biosolids. All of that is, AgriSludge takes care of all of that. If we bring it in-house, then we have to stay up on all the changing regulations, which is not impossible, but it is a little bit of time consumption there. And then the big one is equipment maintenance. So AgriSludge brings their tractor out, their trailers, their loader, and their manure spreader, and they maintain all of the equipment themselves. For us in-house, our tractor is new and is in good shape. Our manure spreader is not. It has been welded and pieced together for the last several years. So eventually we would have to replace that, and that's a cost of about $40,000. We also borrow a loader from Mr. Sutherland to load the manure spreader at the fields because our loaders our Bobcats are too small, the backhoe's too small, and the street department loader, there's an aroma that lingers with this when you borrow the street department's loader. We're not huge fans of loaning it out. So there are benefits there. I really feel like if we're looking at a cost of $5,000 for a year for 2 weeks worth of in-house work, that's $2,500 per land application process. And I don't think that's a ton of money. It's nothing to sneeze at, but I don't think it's a ton of money to take this headache off of the plate and use the manpower that we do have for infrastructure maintenance and the other things that we're trying to catch up on a daily basis. So for me, it is worth having AgriSludge continue to do this. However, that is not the direction that we have been talking about going, and so I wanted to sit down and have a good discussion with the committee. Their contract does go through March of next year, so no action needs to be taken to use them this fall. We can just call them and do it. But it would need, we wrote a 2-year contract with 3 possible single extensions. So if we were to go to using AgriSludge in the future for the land application, we would have to extend it via resolution with council next year. That being said, the land application happens in October, so I wanted to get the conversation going now, just so we can all be on the same page and heading in the same direction. So that's a ton of information. I don't know if anybody has any questions, clarifications, or comments.
How much in overtime is that roughly?
So it would depend on the weather. So if we did it, like what happened this spring would have been Friday night. They started around 7:30 and they worked until midnight, and then they did all day Saturday, an 8-hour day, and most of a Sunday. So that's, I would estimate 20 hours of overtime to get that done per employee, and there's 2 employees at a minimum. It goes a lot faster when you got 3. So 60 hours overtime per application. If it lands that way, you could get lucky and have 3 days during Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it's nice and sunny, and that's when the farmer wants it.
Or both applications could be in overtime territory.
They could. It's extremely weather dependent, which is also what decides when the farmer's ready as well. I mean, it's really tied to the weather. I would like to throw out that by going to the new press, we do save $20,000 every year out of the sewer fund in polymer costs. Where we used to spend around 33, now we spend around 13 because the new press is so much more efficient. So there are some savings in the fund because we got the new press that could help offset the price tag of $21,000 a year for AgriSledge to do the whole thing.
I remember when we got the new press, the idea was the new press would help pay for itself, essentially. And that's what, I mean, I think that's where, at least my head was when we went that route with the new press.
Right.
So, but that is a good savings, nevertheless.
It'll take a lot longer to get to the concept you're talking about. There are electrical savings and hauling savings because it's a drier product.
Right.
But the bulk of the savings is the polymer. It would eat up that savings to go with AgriSledge.
I think the thing that, to me, the bigger issue is tying up our city employees that aren't doing their core function to do this function, which is important, but if we can, I think that AgriSludge, boy, I think what you're saying, Chris, is that it's worth approximately $5,000 to let AgriSludge continue to do it.
I think so, yes. To let them do the whole thing. I really am planning on using them for the hauling just because they're so much faster than we are. So the remaining difference is $5,000 a year, and I think it's worth it to let them handle it.
Okay.
The savings on salt, we're still saving 41,000.
Now the difference is the salt is all water fund, and this is all sewer fund, so they don't overlap with each other. So I sure wish they did.
Mr. Hicken has
If I may, one of the other things that I think, having been on council when Chris brought this to me, and knowing that the utility committee and council as a whole ultimately had the goal that he's now kind of backing off from a little bit, I'd want to point out that at the time, we had an individual that was specifically dedicated to working on it because he was a farmer. And that individual's gone. And so that's another issue that, and then of course, just like Chris said, this is kind of a change, and we felt that bringing it here first was the right spot, so.
No, I mean, Tim's right. When we approved the money to build a larger building and all of that, we had a guy who worked for your department who knew how to do most of the AgriSludge functions. And then when he left, there we are. So, again, I think that the taking your employees away from their core function, to me, is a big factor as well.
I agree with Mr. Marshall on that.
Well, I guess my comment's gonna echo what Tim had said. You know, when we talked about this being a temporary situation where the city was gonna take it back over and see the savings that, you know, that had been desired from day one. When the change was made to do it this way, which obviously was a good change made, you know, in the past. You know, I certainly see both, I see both of the points made that, you know, for 2 weeks worth of time, $5,000 seems like that's a pretty good investment to have us be doing other things that we're much better at and can service the customers that we're out there to service, quite frankly.
I would like to, I'm sorry.
One other quick thing, when I read this, you know, I don't know that the contract says that they will hold the prices with renewal. It says agreement of the parties. So, renewal of this consecutive 1-year terms, renewable terms upon agreement of the parties. So I would want to make sure that they're going to hold their prices before we would agree to take it further, because that would offset the math that we're talking about.
Right.
But I agree with you that for $5,000 or less, it seems like it wouldn't be a smart move to utilize city time and even potentially get somebody injured. I mean, this is not an easy process.
No, it is not. This is
And
heavy
putting
equipment.
somebody in a situation that, I mean, maybe even looking into whether our insurance people were knowledgeable that we were doing this when, in the past.
It's a very good question.
If they were, and we're not doing it now, we should get a reduction. Because this is an operation that is not a normal, sanitary, situation. And if they didn't know about it, then we'll just say this was a hypothetical question. So.
Well, and then, you know, as our workers' compensation, it's,
Yep.
is a code, and there's a code, I'm sure, for water and sewer workers. I doubt if you read that description where it's, wherever it is in the Ohio Administrative Code or the BWC regulation, I would doubt that it includes applying product to farmers' fields.
So the flip side of that is if someone did get hurt, we could be in trouble.
Mhm.
You know, they wouldn't be
Mhm.
covered essentially by
That's something I
what
never
we're
even
doing.
considered, yeah.
So anyhow, I agree, but if it were to, for instance, if this was to go up and we were to be $20,000 different, or, you know,
Correct.
this would cost us that much more money, and we'd
Right.
basically be back to the same position as we were hauling it to the landfill, I wouldn't agree with that.
Correct, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
That makes perfect sense.
Because then I think that there's some, there's some problems with us doing it on our own, the application, not hauling it to the landfill, that's
That's a contract.
hauling,
Right.
well, no, or again, our contract, or even having a city employee do it, I mean, that's.
Yeah, I
hauling-
think he falls, we have that covered.
Yeah, hauling poop around's gotta be probably
Right.
in the description.
So
That's proper.
poop code.
But this technical,
No,
EPA involved,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yeah.
that's an excellent point. I would like to point out that the savings, although this will take a hit out of the savings to pay for the press and go into the program, it still is half of what it would cost to go to the landfill. So the biosolids program still does save us a good amount of money. I am asking to take away some of the savings that we thought we might get to ease the burden on the department, so.
Yeah, and we've got capital invested in parts and pieces of things that we purchased to do this, and that
Right.
stuff gets, you know, I know that it's gonna sit, or it'll get washed through essentially. But for today and tomorrow and the next day, I don't know that it makes any sense for them not to do it.
Right.
If it's a $5,000 difference per year.
Right. I will say the equipment, we are able to mow our own well fields now because we have the tractor, we have a brush hog behind it, that takes the street department out of it. So, and we use it for loading, we still get to use the equipment, but you're right, it'll be
Okay.
less than before, so.
Fair enough.
So, if there's no other headaches, I think that's the direction that I'm gonna try and take things, and.
Would you mind checking to see that, before we make a final decision on that, would you just mind checking that the contract can be renewed at its current
I will definitely do
units
that.
and unit prices?
Is
So
there
1,000
interest in doing all 3 years at once, if we can get them to lock in at that price?
I
Instead of
can't
doing
imagine
3
that it's gonna go
individuals?
down.
That's what I would think, instead of 3 individuals, if we can get him to do all 3 at once.
Be new contract?
Well,
Well, I mean, extend,
you'll.
so I guess the way it's worded,
It's
I don't
kinda
know.
up to you, Chris. You know,
Yeah.
there's some psychology there, strategy. You know, if they think that we're willing to take it over and do it ourselves, the price may be less.
That's a
If
very
they
good point.
don't think we're willing to do it and we're shucking the whole thing, then that price could go up.
That's true, that's a good point. I'll stew on that.
So,
But I will verify the prices, and I will also check with the insurance company, both this week, so that we can make an informed decision.
I don't know if the committee has any other questions about it, any other thoughts?
No, I agree, like, for the cost savings of the, just $5,000, but if the price does go up, then obviously the warrant's being looked at again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's all I have for number 6. Moving on to number 7, possible Southwest Licking Interconnect bulk water sales. So, Mr. Higgin has been involved with this, and please, if I forget anything or miss something, please jump in. Rob Platt from the district came to us with an idea to try and help Jefferson Water and Sewer. Jefferson Water and Sewer has difficulty finding enough water for their customer demand, and they're looking to buy water from anybody that they can. Southwest Licking has an interconnect with Jefferson Water and Sewer. We do not, we're not close enough to them. But the concept that was kind of spitballed around, that's the stage that we're at, is spitballing around. But the concept was, if there was an interconnect constructed between the city and the district in our low pressure zone, we could sell water to the district could sell water to Jefferson, and that's how it could get there. Interconnects are an interesting conversation. I think everybody's usually all in or all out on an interconnect. Personally, I see this as being potentially beneficial to the city. It gives us a chance to sell some of our extra capacity that we have And it also would allow us, so the thought would be, the interconnect would be paid for by Jefferson Water, if they're interested in doing this. That interconnect would, one, give us an emergency interconnect on the low pressure side. The one that we currently talked about with the contract with Southwest Licking is on our high pressure side. The benefit to that is, one, it's on the other half of our grid. But two, it would also allow for, in the future, if something came to the corporate park that was a big water user, and Southwest Licking couldn't provide that much on their own, but the two of us together could provide what that user would want, this interconnect would be in a location that we could use it for that. We could sell to Southwest Licking and go down to the corporate park, if we got to that point. I think the only way I would be interested in having the conversation is if contract language regarding the interconnect mirrored the language that we've already written for the one that's coming with the contract up there, making it emergency only, with the option to go with the bulk water sales approved by resolution of council and Southwest Licking's board. So I feel like the language we created for that interconnect really does, it's strong language. I think it gives us a lot of control over something like this, which takes away maybe some of the resentment towards interconnects that my predecessor may have had. I know he was not a fan of doing the interconnect. But then you also have the potential to sell existing capacity that's just sitting in the ground waiting to be sold. And as long as the language says, I reserve the right to keep this resource for the residents of Pataskla, and we can stop selling it to you for any reason and sell it to customers in our area. As long as we have that get out of jail free card, I think it's a possible way to make some extra money into the water fund until we get a big user that would eat up our capacity.
So the district would buy from us and then they sell to Jefferson, or?
That would be the concept here, is that we would sell to the district with our out-of-town rate at an interconnect located at Plant 2. We have a 12-inch water main on one side of the street, and the district has a 12-inch water main on the other side of the street. So that would be a good place for a connection. We already own property. And then we would sell to Southwest Licking out-of-town rate. They would, I would imagine they would have a pass-through markup fee, and then they would sell to Jefferson Water and Sewer. So it would be to help Jefferson, but Southwest would be our customer, not Jefferson, if that makes sense. And again, it's very early in the conversation, so I definitely wanted to bring it to you guys and get opinions and takes.
So why doesn't Jefferson just buy from, why doesn't Southwest Licking sell to Jefferson, or do they already?
They currently do. 2 months ago, I saw in their minutes, they sell a lot. Jefferson's water and sewer usage goes up in the summer. They have a lot of nice yards, to be frank, and that's what eats up their water source. They bought 6 million gallons from Southwest Licking 2 months ago, and I believe last month was close to 8 million gallons. So I don't know all the motivation behind Southwest Licking's plans, but I would imagine it would be nice to take some of that burden off of them if we had available capacity and were able to provide the service.
What kind of money is that look like?
So we have about 300,000 gallons a day in available capacity. And give me just a second here. So our out-of-town rate is at $762 per thousand times 300. So that's $2,286 a day minus the cost of producing the water. So that's not profit. That's gross. But
That seems high to me.
300,000 at 762 per thousand gallons is 762 times 300 is 2286. The in-town rate, which is a lot closer to what it costs, we don't make a lot of money on the in-town rate, so that would be at 1344. So the potential is there to make $1,200 a day if they were at full throttle. The potential is there for $1,200 a day into the fund.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly have a problem with selling water to rich people in Jefferson Township so they can water their country club and their massive lawns that they have My concern is getting more involved with the district. Until the lawsuit from their former director is settled, I'm a little hesitant to get involved with them in any, we have the agreement.
Right.
But until that's settled, I'm a little hesitant to get involved with them in any more significant way.
That is understood.
And I think that, to me, it would be, I'm not saying absolutely no, I would never consider it, I'm just a little hesitant. I think
Right.
the other thing is that it would have to be ironclad, that we can get out of, no matter what, no matter how badly the Rockefellers there in Jefferson Township need their yards watered, that we'd be able to get out of that if we had a large user that came in, if we had,
For no reason.
for no reason, I mean, I'm just starting, I mean.
Yeah,
you
I know, just for no reason.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about
Shut it off.
Right, yeah, just turn it off. I mean, we have to be able to just say no. If we had, again, if we had a problem with one of our production, I'm talking about, Andy's exactly right, just no reason, but if we had a problem with production, I'm talking about the reasons we'd be able to get production,
Right.
some sort of infrastructure issue, we have a flood, we have some electricals, Dara show again, or something like that, where we're shut down, so we don't have to, I mean.
No, right, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. We have,
And that, the other problem I have with this interconnect is that it's not an interconnect with, and I have some questions about Jefferson Water and Sewer, how they're set up, if you know. But it's not, this is not an interconnect with Jefferson Water and Sewer, it's an interconnect with Southwest Licking.
correct.
And so, I'd wanna really take a fine look at that agreement, and then with the light of the other agreement that we have, that Mr. Walther, Mr. Hicken worked on.
Right.
It was fraught with problems.
Yeah.
And especially when they wanted to buy water, with the buy-sell agreement stuff, where they wanted to have the ability to purchase, they wanted to have a set number that they could purchase in the agreement. We fought that one, we fought that one like crazy.
My perception is that the water and sewer district, their main goal is to sell water and collect sewer fees. That they have much more of a business model than I think our water and sewer service does. So they look, that's just my perception, and that's from just
Yeah.
listening to Mr. Heck and Mr. Walther on the comeback. Well, hold on, I could say, I guess some of that was the executive session. That's just my perception of listening to some of the comeback from those meetings, listening to Chris, Nate, when Nate was here. So so I have some questions. Do you know what the structure of Jefferson Water and Sewer is? Is that run by that's the township, right?
Yeah, so they have a board. They're a water district. They're very similar to Southwest Lake.
So they're separate. It's not run by their trustees.
Correct. They have board members.
Who appoints the board members? Is it the trustees or?
So I do not know. I would
I'm just
assume that
curious.
it's similar to Southwest Lakings, but I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, what's their, where do if it's similar, I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense that if the trustees would appoint a board to run the sewer district, they would just run it themselves. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
So I think they go outside of Black. I think they grab a couple
So they-
small areas, so they gotta have representation.
So they may have people from different parts, like Southwest Licking does, different areas, okay.
That's my understanding. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Appointed by somebody,
Right. Right.
okay.
So to talk a little bit about the contract language, so again, we've had just 2 meetings, just discussions, just is this a possibility? And I did, the first thing I told Jefferson is that I would only be interested in this if there was language that said exactly that. We can get out of there for anything. We've got a resident here, we got a main break, we got a pump fail, anything at all. There's no guarantee of 0 gallons through the interconnect every day. And then Mr. Hicken I was focused in my head on the corporate part. Mr. Hicken brought up a good point that we could get a big user anywhere. And, you never know what's gonna come. And we would have to reserve that right. So that would be a critical thing in the language. And the language can be very difficult to work through on an interconnect. I do think we have a pretty good model to go off of, but.
Chris, why do you want to go to the low side? Why wouldn't, if we were to evaluate an agreement with Southwest Licking, because that's who it's with, Why wouldn't we utilize the one that we have?
So we could do that. They have two pressure zones as well. And for them, where they're connected to Jefferson Water and Sewer, that interconnect does not help them directly. Indirectly, you could use that interconnect to feed the high pressure zone. The water you're not sending up there, you could send through. You could do that way. The difference with this would be that it gets us directly to the corporate park, and this would be a worst case scenario, but if everything fell apart, we would also be connected to Fairfield County through Southwest Licking. So it's redundancy in emergency water source, where if our aquifer went down, we could still buy some from Fairfield County and daisy chain it
So
up that
this,
way.
this brings us to what Tim and I have talked about many times, about just a concern in general of being a regional water player, being involved in a regional group.
Right.
I think we were very hesitant to do that.
So I am against being a regional water supplier. I see the benefit in emergencies only, which was my main driver behind all the conversations we had on the last interconnect. Emergencies only, I see benefits to it. Being, for lack of a better phrase, being Columbus of Licking County, I have no interest in doing that. I think our resource should be reserved for Pataskala. At this point, we do have excess resource that right now is just sitting in the ground. We could make some money on that. However, there are concerns with an interconnect to a district.
It's just like when you sell natural gas from your well. If you're buying it for less than you don't ever want to sell it for less than you're going to have to go out and buy it for.
Right.
And what my concern would be in this language would be, okay, if we decide to do this, then we're gonna have prices that they're going to reciprocate back whatever we're selling. I mean, there's a lot of details to this that
There really is.
get to be questionable whether they'll do it. I don't know that Southwest Licking could ever agree to that. Because we didn't agree to that. Well, we had a few things in the agreement. You're right, the agreement we used up at the high pressure area did have many of those items kind of taken into consideration, but that was a concept for emergency practices.
It definitely was.
And I mean, and this isn't, I guess this isn't a knock on anybody who's in the negotiation, but that sucked up a lot of time.
Yes, sir.
It sucked up obviously a lot of the negotiators' time, but it also sucked up a lot of council time too, for them, for those folks to come back and explain it and the back and forth. So I know they have a relatively new board. I know they have a new director. For me, there's still a big sour taste in my mouth from the way all of that went from their perspective. So I'm if you guys want to take your leisure time and chit chat with them, what can I say? But I'm not I'm not wild about the idea.
Perfectly understood.
I mean, it would, to me, it would have to be, like Andy was talking about, the pricing and all of that.
There's so many pieces to it.
Geez, and so I'm kind of meh on it.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly understood. And
Now, if it was
Reasonable.
Jefferson, if we bumped up against Jefferson, if we it would be just with them. Say, well, okay, we can give it a whirl and see what they want to do, see what they're like. But we're not. We're basic. This is basically. And the thing is, we're selling water to Southwest Licking, and they're selling it to Jefferson. I'm assuming they're going to sell it at an increased rate. They're not going to sell it for they're buying it from us. They're going to have the Jefferson.
Have to be a markup.
They're going to have the Jefferson water and sewer rate.
What's Jefferson willing to buy it for?
The preliminary conversations with them, they are desperate to find water.
They had, over the summer, it was in the news, they had to cut way back on consumption. I mean, and it didn't go over well because, again, this is a very high-end area, and these folks all had these big, beautiful lawns, and they weren't able to water their lawn, and they were furious. And I think there's a couple of country clubs in there that were limited on what they could do, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not it's that they don't have grandmas and things like that who can't take a shower. This is their wealthy customers who can't maintain their property. Now, they should, I mean, they have property, want to maintain it, but it's not like it's,
I get what you're saying. So
Okay.
it's not like it's desperate.
No, no,
Or
no, no,
somebody
no,
that
but-
needs water is
no, yeah.
nice to have.
Yeah, this is nice to have,
Mhm.
so, nice to have, so, you know.
I guess to echo Todd's sentiment, I'd be willing to sit in, I don't know about Tim, but I'd be willing to sit in on a meeting with them, ask these kind of questions, those kind. I wonder, why aren't you buying it from Fairfield County? Because you are hooked into Fairfield County indirectly through Southwest Licking.
Or,
Why aren't you buying it from Fairfield
or
County?
Columbus.
Or
They're
Columbus?
sitting right, I mean, they got,
I think the Columbus thing is a political issue with Jefferson. Fairfield County, they did enact a 90-day emergency. So Fairfield County's interconnect with Southwest Licking is also set up as emergency. It's not for this, but they enacted a 90-day short-term. You can buy water from Fairfield County through Southwest Licking to you, trying to get them through the rest of this year.
Okay,
So,
so this, okay, so we've got some time to talk about it. This is
Absolutely.
for next year.
Yes, sir.
type thing. You know what, it's enticing for the emergency side of it, and especially for the corporate park side of it. I see why you're interested in it.
it could be a zero cost to the city infrastructure improvement, but that doesn't
As
deny.
long
the
as we're not obligated in any way, shape, or form to sell it to them, even if we started selling it to them and we had sold it to them for 5 years in a row, there is no, we need to have, I think this is what maybe Todd's saying, we need to have this absolute, without question, statement that says, we have every right, 100%, without question, to turn the nozzle off,
Right,
Period.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
with no judgment against us.
right. Now, here's the other thing.
You can't
too.
take us, matter of fact, you can't take us to court.
Yeah, you,
Right.
End of story.
if you waive it, you have to, we waive your right, I mean, it's because they will, okay? Jefferson Township, those folks, you know, they're not gonna like that we cut their water off in July and their
Right.
grass turns brown.
Right.
Here's the other thing about with dealing with them, we're not gonna, they're like, I'm trying to say, this is kinda like having a relative that sure needs money, you know? And you kinda, you loan them money, you loan, then they pay you back, but they're never gonna come to you and say, hey, you know, Uncle Chris, you know, I'm gonna buy you a new car for Christmas. They're gonna be a,
Right.
if we need water, we're not gonna be able to go to, hey Jefferson, no, the other way. How about, can we buy some water from you there? Say, no,
Right.
we're
We don't
totally
have any.
dependent on
Right.
Fairfield County and Southwest Licking and Pataska and everybody else to give us water for our own needs.
Right, right.
It's always gonna be a one-way street.
It will. The benefit that I see is the interconnect built could possibly help the corporate park out and the emergency side. And to be frank with you, without language that is completely ironclad in 100% of Pataska's favor,
But-
I'm not interested at all. But I feel like it doesn't affect our operation. We don't need this thing. So we're almost in a catbird seat where if everything lines up perfect for Pataska, I'm interested, and if anything doesn't, then I'm not. It's kind of where I'm sitting.
Just as, because of their lack of capacity, Jefferson Township would always be a taker.
Yeah.
So when Southwest Licking Water and Sewer, they're not going, I don't ever see them helping us with our own customer base. They see us, they because of how they see the world of water. If we got a large customer, we have this interconnect, where we get a large customer and we say, hey, Southwest Licking, we'd like to get some water from you. I just don't see them as,
That's why I was saying the price and
Yeah.
that discussion has to be made upfront and set, so it's a two-way street.
yeah,
Exactly
I
what
just
you're
don't see them
saying.
as saying, oh, hi, Pataska, you get that big multi-use housing development, such and such spot that needs a bunch of water, because there's a this and a that, there's commercial and residential and retail. Now, we're not gonna help you, because we're mad because they didn't build it in our service district. They built it in Pataska's service district.
Well, I'm, Chris, I will say, not from the committee's point of view, but just from my own point of view, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk with them about it, but understanding this isn't gonna happen like this year.
But absolutely, absolutely. I think
And
their concept is to try and get ready for next summer.
Yeah.
And
And
like I said,
I
we
would
have no
be a
timeline.
person that would be echoing these sentiments that are, hey, this doesn't sound like it's a great deal for us, what's in it for us?
Right.
Right.
And,
Right.
and we don't wanna, I mean, we're not trying to rain on anybody's parade, it's just that
No.
when you, if you, you know, you get Andy to sit down and start talking, you get Tim to start talking, with them, you guys start, when your ideas come back to council, there's enough people on council who remember what it was like, that you're gonna get some
Right.
really, really, really hard looks, so.
Understood and justifiably so.
Yeah,
Makes
yeah, okay.
perfect sense.
I think Chris and I expected that to be the overall feeling of this committee. However, it does represent an opportunity, at a time when revenues could end up going down across the board, to have infrastructure built for us, to make money on capacity that's just sitting in the ground, and to ultimately provide a bit of a safeguard. And so we didn't think it was worth dismissing out of hand. We thought it was worth bringing to this committee for just that purpose, so that you knew. I would anticipate, if from what I hear, that the talks, the general talks would continue, but with a jaundiced eye and realizing, you know, we told them we were bringing it to this group. We'll tell them what this group said. And then if we're gonna have any subsequent meetings,
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah, great.
No, as I say, I think, hey, but I'm not saying, oh, don't, again, don't do it, not saying don't do it, it's just that,
Right.
From the perspective of not having been involved in the first contract and situation with that.
You are lucky.
yeah, really.
So I have a lot of the same points that Mr. Hicken just mentioned, you know, it's free infrastructure. I mean, even if they were buying all 1,200 a day, I mean, that's what, $438,000 a year in extra funds to go in the water department. So, I mean, that's plus the upgraded infrastructure and potential to service the corporate park even better. So some of that does pique my interest, so I'm glad that it wasn't dismissed right away, but I completely understand where you guys are coming from, and that's why I've kind of been quiet, just listening and learning the situations that came from the other one.
Some of the things that we'll have to explore is, you know, what infrastructure costs would we be responsible for? You know, what kind of pumps would we have to continue to maintenance or even put online to supply that water? I agree with you that there's a lot of upside to it, but, you know, I know we went through this discussion over and over and over again about Beechwood Trails, about what we would do to reconfigure some of the service areas and what kind, you know, when we were in this big issue with 310 and servicing water up there, there were a number of upgrades to water lines that had to occur. We had to put on a fourth pump that was gonna supply water up there. So there's just a number of pieces and parts to it that I would wanna try to understand to make sure that, you know, the lower pressure district wouldn't have to be upgraded in some way, because I don't know that Jefferson, and what's even worse is, I think, is if we do take from Jefferson infrastructure and so forth, that just makes their claim even stronger when you shut the spigot off. You know,
And that's where the wording in the contracts come into play.
exactly.
And
It'd have to be large, bold print,
yeah, but it sounds like. they are
initialed by
desperate,
each
so-
one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
No,
it's, yeah.
I trust you.
Yeah. But Dustin, since I've been on council, when I first came on, we were having a dispute with Southwest Licking Water and Sewer on a different issue, the old operating agreement that we had. We had litigation with them, it cost us a lot of money. So this has been all 6+ years has been an ongoing
Oh, yeah.
struggle with them, to try to work together, and so I'm just, there's a lot, there's a lot of upside, but I just remember.
We would wanna go in with our eyes wide
Oh,
open,
yeah,
wide open.
yeah.
I
And
agree.
there's
All of
nothing
your
wrong
guys'
with doing that.
No.
They're our neighbors, we should support them in the community aspect of it. We should do all that, but there's definitely some. Well, guys, I'm gonna actually suggest that we, if
Yeah,
there's nothing else,
I've been.
otherwise we're gonna get really wet. not that that's an issue, but this is a utility meeting.
It's better than the other half, so
Right.
I'll take it.
Is there anything else, Chris?
That's all I had, sir.
Does the committee have anything else they want to discuss? I'm gonna take that motion to dismiss.
Second?
Walter?
Yes,
Barstow?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
thank you. Thanks, Chris, nice job.
Thank you, everybody.